This video is an overview of the macrodials reports that subscribers receive on a weekly basis. The purpose of these reports is to provide a thorough analysis of key employment data releases such as the latest claims, payroll, and unemployment rate data in order to help investors identify whether shifts in the business cycle are. The report features two main types of analysis, each providing investors with distinct contextual insights. The first analysis anchors the employment data to significant event triggers. These triggers can include the inversion of the 10-year less 3-month yield curve, the normalization of the 10-year less 3-month yield curve, the onset of recession, and the end of recession. This framework utilizes these events as the starting point for analysis, tracking the subsequent path of employment data over time and comparing it to paths of the same data set following previous instances of the same trigger event. This approach is valuable because trigger events often herald shifts or turning points in the economic landscape, which can profoundly affect employment data, leading it to behave in predictable ways. The second analysis examines recent employment data releases by comparing them to clusters of historical data, categorized into different regimes or phases of the business cycle. These regimes are expansion, recovery, limbo, pre-recessionary, and recessionary. Whether a data release falls within a specific business cycle regime is determined by our macro composite model, which reaches its determination by analyzing the overall performance of a broad set of macroeconomic indicators. This segmented approach is beneficial because it illustrates how specific employment datasets can display distinct characteristics depending on the economic environment. By comparing the latest employment data releases to past releases during similar business cycle regimes, investors can better identify potential shifts in the economic landscape. The report summary tables provide a concise overview of essential metrics related to the latest release of a given employment data point. These metrics include the most recent release number, the year-over-year change, the latest revision, and the date that was revised, and finally the percentile rank of the revision relative to the prevailing economic regime, as determined by our macro composite model. The path analysis charts illustrate how specific employment data has evolved following a trigger event, such as the onset of a yield curve inversion. In this report, the trigger event is the 10-year less 3-month inversion that occurred in November 2022. The charts displayed here track the development of various employment data measures over the 16 months following the initial inversion. In this path chart, the green line represents the trajectory of claims data following yield curve inversions. Insights on the right side of the chart show that the current claims values are significantly below the historical distribution during such inversions, indicating economic resilience. The two path charts below Figure 1 illustrate how initial claims data trajectories following an inversion event differ based on the economic regime, either inflationary or disinflationary. In the first chart displaying paths from inflationary regimes, like our current one, the thick green line shows the path of current claims data, while the red lines represent paths during previous inflationary periods. In the second chart, which displays paths during disinflationary regimes, the current path is not showing because our current regime is not disinflationary. The last visualization in this series compares the current trajectory of initial claims data with historical paths observed after previous instances of inversion events. This analysis helps determine whether the current path aligns with past patterns or deviates from them, offering insights into potential shifts in economic behavior. The business cycle regime charts examine recent employment data either in its original form or transformed into period-over-period analysis via probability distributions. They compare the current data release to the range of historical values. Two primary charts are presented. The first chart shows where the current print falls within the historical range of prints in a given regime as identified by our macro composite model. This helps us understand whether the current release is normal or abnormal. The second chart allows us to discern how data behaves across different business cycle phases by overlaying all of the possible economic regime distributions of the data. Finally, the summary table highlights important statistical properties of the distributions. The report presents 3 distinct period-over-period regime analysis of claims: year-over-year, quarter-over-quarter, and month-over-month. In each analysis, the charts contrast the latest period-over-period changes in claims with historical values from comparable business cycle regimes.